Welcome back, people. We are getting to the end. This is the last applied episode. So we're going to be taking everything we've been dealing with so far. We have a fully configured rig that's functional. And now we got to figure out how to make music with it. Because there's so much capability here and so much power that it would be probably pretty possible to get overwhelmed by it all. It's almost like trying to go to Jerry's Deli and figure out what you want for lunch for those people from LA. Like, the menu is 8 pages deep. Like, how do you figure out what you want to eat for lunch? There's just too many options. And a rig like this can be like that. So it's going to be important that we figure out how to manage it, how to control it, how to lay stuff out so it makes sense for my brain and my feet, seeing as how I'm going to be the one using it. But in the process, hopefully, you'll get some ideas on how you can do something for yourself that works for the way your brain works. So before we go further, I should probably define a term I've been using a little bit in this series, and I will use some more today, which is paint palette. For anyone that's never seen a portrait painter paint, they have a little, like a flat plate with a thumb hole in it that they can hold with their thumb. And on that plate are a bunch of piles of paint. And the colors of those paints, when they're mixed together, determine what colors you can put on the canvas. So for instance, if you have blues and reds and yellows on your paint palette, but the painting you're trying to make is supposed to be browns and tans, that's going to be a problem. So you're going to need to change out the paint palette so that what you're able to paint matches what you're trying to put on the canvas. And I think about effects and guitar pedals and things like that in much the same way. The effects that I have, the settings that they have when I pull them up determines what sounds I can make when I sort of mix them all together. So I want to be able to change out the universe. So if I'm playing ambient music, I've got a universe and a paint palette for that. If I'm playing Americana, I've got a paint palette for that. If I'm playing fusion, I have a different paint palette for that. So I want to make sure that I can control everything so it's all seamless and I don't have to faff about and get lost and any of that kind of stuff. So speaking of fusion, my friend Scott Henderson has a way of working for his live rig that will probably make sense to some people. So he has a bunch of analog pedals that he just works with his feet as normal, but he has a half rack effects unit that he runs via MIDI. And he does it in a really simple way, so he doesn't have to think. What he does is he takes his set list for the evening and he figures out all of the patches that he needs per song, and he just lines them up in a row in the order that they appear in the song. And at that point, all he has to do is just hit the up button all night. Up, 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 up. Never has to think, never has to go back down, never has to punch in a number. He's just hitting up because in Dolomite, he knows he needs these 5 sounds and these 2 patches repeat. So it's this patch and then another patch and then back to this patch. And he just hits up, 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 up all night and he doesn't have to think, which is a really great way to do it. Now, I was talking to my friend Billy Bush recently, who is from Garbage, and along with producing and engineering and that kind of stuff, part of what he does for them is dealing with the sequencer and the programming for the sequencer. So Garbage does a lot of stuff these days where they'll play Glastonbury and stuff like that, where there's no sound check. And, a typical band at a festival like that, probably won't sound good until song 3. But what Garbage does very intelligently is in rehearsal, they get all of the sounds to be exactly mixed perfectly through the mains, and then they save those presets. So that guitar patch needs to go up a dB, that guitar patch needs to come down a dB, the bass needs to have chorus that's a little thicker or whatever. And then they tie all those preset changes to the sequencer. So as they're playing along with the sequencer is actually changing the guitar sounds. It's changing the bass sounds. It might even be changing the vocal effects. So they don't have to think about anything. They can just play music. So if you're, sort of playing the same songs in the same way all the time, like in a cover band, for instance, it might make a lot of sense to just change everything about your sound with one foot switch. So if you're playing, New Sensation by INXS, which is a great song, maybe you need 3 sounds for that. And you just have sound 1, sound 2, and sound 3 on 3 separate foot switches, and you just hit them as you go through the song. That probably makes the most sense for people. Now, for me personally, my way of working is sort of like a modified version of Billy Bush's way, Scott Henderson's way, and the painter's way, in the sense that I want to be able to paint with all my analog pedals, all the stuff that's in the pre-loop, but I also want to be able to pull up a paint palette and then still modify stuff within that paint palette. So if I'm playing ambient music, I want to pull up an entire bunch of effects that will work for ambient music. So then I can still play around. Or if I'm playing Americana, I want to pull up a bunch of different sounds that would work in Americana so I can play around with things. So for me personally, I need to be able to have access to my drive sounds quickly, like all my drive sounds. And the reason I say that is because I use my volume knob a lot on the guitar to determine how crunchy things are. Then I use the volume pedal here as my master volume for how loud the entire guitar sound is. So this always goes in my effects loop. It's not in front of the amp because I don't want it to change the gain. So I'll, turn on a drive pedal, roll the volume knob on the guitar to where the gain is right, and then turn it up or down with the master fader here to make sure that I'm blending in with the band. Now, I have two MIDI controllers here, and along with all the other control from the pedals, I definitely have been putting some thought into how I'm going to use this for myself. And remembering a concept that I've had for years from high-end mixing consoles called spill, I think I finally figured it out. So spill basically is a feature on, very nice mixing desks, whereby you have one fader on the console that's actually controlling a bunch of other hidden faders. But if you hit a button, it spills out all of the channels that this fader is controlling so you can play around with them, and then you put them away. Drink. So you can pick any of your faders, boink, spill all the stuff that it's dealing with, and then doink, put it away, and you've got your regular faders there. So I think what I'm going to do, because the MC6 Pro has a wonderful little command called bank jump, it basically means that I can have a preset laid out, and as soon as I hit the preset, this can jump to another bank or another page in that same bank to allow me to turn everything on and off here on the top panel, which is essentially a spill mode. So let's go into the editor and I can show you how I'm going to sort of set all this stuff up. All right, so we're back in the editor, and this is how I've decided to arrange things for myself. So over here on the left-hand side, I've got the banks. So along with the libraries for the pedals that don't have screens, Volante, Brig, Compadre, and Ultraviolet, I'm also going to have banks that sort of are relative to a kind of music. There'll be an ambient bank and a Hendrix bank and a fusion bank and rock and Americana and that kind of stuff. And over on the right-hand side, if you remember, there are 24 presets in each bank. And I'm going to have the first 12 slots of those presets just make combinations of pedals in that style of music. So some presets will have 2 pedals, some will have 5 pedals, some will have 1 pedal, doesn't matter. But all the sounds in those first 12 are going to be based upon whatever the kind of music in that bank is, if that makes sense. And then what I'm going to do in the third page, so presets M through R, is I'm going to set up on-offs here in the MC6 Pro for the 6 pedals on the top panel. So I've got control over the 9 pedals underneath with this guy, and now I'm going to have control of the 6 pedals on top on-offs here with the MC6 Pro. And then the last page is going to be the presets that this guy always controls. So Wagner Red, channel switching for the amp, and tap tempo. So every bank will have, on the 4th page, we'll have these presets there. And on the 3rd page, we'll have control for the on-offs for the 6 pedals on the top. And then the first 12 are going to be presets that are based upon the kind of music that is. And the thing that makes this possible is basically the bank jump command, which is sort of doing a spill kind of a command for me. So let's figure out how to set up one patch to do all this kind of stuff. We'll set up the on-offs first, then we'll set up a patch, and then see, what kind of stuff we can get. To set up these on-off messages, we're going to come over to preset M. This is going to be for Brig, not rig, but Brig. So we need to do 2 actions here. We need a control change for Brig, which is bypass engage, which is 102. That needs to go to Brig. And we're going to use both positions now. Remember, there are a couple of different positions for these presets in the MC6 Pro. We're going to use 2 positions this time. We're going to use the same control change. It's 102. And this value is going to be 127. Dunk. Going to Brig, and this needs to be set to position 2. Now, If you're turning on or off something with a CC value that is absolute, meaning it's on or off, 0 will be off and 127 will be on. 0 is the minimum value in MIDI, 127 is the maximum value, so 0 is off, 127 is on. Right now, if you left this like this and you left this at 1, it wouldn't work. So you have to make sure it's 0. It's really annoying, but make sure it's 0. Both going to brig, position 1, position 2. If I turn toggle mode off, or on rather, and I set this to brig off, and this is brig on, and now I can use some colors. So maybe there's like a pink color there, and maybe that's like a strike through purple color or something like that. So brig off, brig on, toggle mode, 2 positions, position 1 and position 2. So 1 hit of the switch is position 1, hit the switch again, position 2, position 1 again, position 2. So it's just going to toggle back and forth if I push save. And now we look at this pedal, doink, 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 doink. So awesome. So I've already done all of the other units here in the second bank just to make things quicker. So I've got brig on and off, Enigma on and off, Volante, Big Sky, Timeline, and Mobius. So brig, Enigma, Volante, Big Sky, Timeline, Mobius. So now I can start figuring out how to arrange presets with this jump command. So let's make one big master preset that we're sort of telling all the pedals what to do, and we'll incorporate the jump command so you can see what happens when we recall something and then it spills right to our control over all these pedals. All right, so if we look at the first preset here, we'll just name this, Testy Testy. That seems to be a common one. Short name, Testy Testy. Thank you very much. With the E's wrong, thank you. Oh, it sucks being anal. Okay, we're just going to save this name just because it's there. All right, so I'm going to just do a simple collection of some presets here. So I'm going to start. I know that I'll use like a warble from brig. So we'll say brig is going to get preset 1, which is a warble, I think. All right, and then we also need to turn it on. So we also, along with the remembrance of that, we need to turn on the bypass. That was 102, wasn't it? Yeah, there we go. And we need to turn that on. Cool. And do the brig. So now brig is going to recall preset 1 and turn itself on. We're going to, tell you what, we're going to have Big Sky, MX, listen to, I don't know, preset 6, whatever, who knows. And we're going to tell it as well to turn itself on. So Big Sky MX, bypass is, oh, it's 102 as well. Cool. So now brig recalls a preset, turns itself on. Big Sky recalls a preset, turns itself on. Let's have Volante recall a preset and turn itself on. Something maybe not so long. So maybe that one. I don't know. We'll see. I did make a few of these, and we'll see how it comes out. Hey, these are this is a crapshoot. And I'm going to have it turn itself on, of course. So for Volante, the echo on and off. Okay. Should be when that needs to go to Volante as well. So it's turning itself on after going to number 4. And we're also going to turn on some pedals in the pre-ML10X. So we'll do a press. Now check this out. There's a different kind of message. You can say Morningstar ML10X message, and we know that it's the one in channel 15, not 16. 16 is the post unit. So I'm going to turn on Compadre, and we'll do Compadre for now. And actually, that means I should probably have Compadre recall the preset. We're going to do a really compressed one for Compadre, number 2, and we'll also have it turn itself on. being able to just sort of like not have to look at a manual to figure out what all the CC commands are, so cool. Compadre recalls number 2, turns itself on, and last but not least, the jump command. So press, come down here to bank jump. This is the coolest thing. So bank jump, I'm going to have it go to the same bank, that is bank 2, but I want to go to page 3. So it's going to go to this page here. So I'm going to push play as soon as I recall this preset, and it's going to jump. It's going to recall everything, but it's going to jump to this bank here. So let's save this. Bang. All right, so we have testy testy. That's testy testy. So if we actually try to hear something, who knows what this sounds like? I have no idea what presets I've chosen. So dry. So as I hit this, watch what happens to the display. It's going to jump to page 3. Doink. I can turn brig off. Sort of play around with whatever you have loaded. You know, it's like, I don't know what timeline is. What's on Mobius? I don't know. So if I had this recall all cool sounds that would make sense for this bank, I'd have all sorts of new flavors to play with, even if they didn't come on at first. So what we should do now is start talking about how you actually make presets, and we can put together maybe like 5 or 6 and see what they sound like when you switch between them. So the last question remaining is, how do you actually make sounds? I don't mean technically how do you save them with all the gear, but how do you actually make tones? It's something that experienced players do naturally and don't think about very much. But for younger folks that are just getting started, sometimes following a philosophy or 2 might help. I talked to a bunch of people, guys at Strymon, guys in my team, friends and players, and it seems like everything sort of comes down to one of 3 different directions as a philosophy. The first one would be you'd start from the dry sound. Guitar, nothing else. Add anything you need to the dry guitar. Compression, distortion, wah, whatever. Still dry. After that, you move further into the chain, into modulation effects, delay effects, and then finally into reverbs at the end of the chain, which helps set the sort of the width and the depth of that sound. The opposite way would be number 2, which would be you start at the end. So you start with the reverbs and the delays to set the width and set the depth, especially if you're using ambient music, and then come back forward towards the guitar, into delays, into modulations, into special effects in the middle, all the way back to compression and distortion and just the clean guitar sound. And then finally, you've got sort of starting from a special pedal or starting in the middle. So if you have a pedal that is special, that does something very specific, and you want to build a sound around that, a lot of times you'll start there. So if we just start from a real dry sound. So let's see, it's good to have an idea of what you want to be able to do. So I haven't used the octafuzz in a while. And I think I'm going to want a little bit of extra gain after that. So I don't want the octafuzz tone to change, but I'd like a little bit more hair behind it. Cool. And then add ultraviolet for some Hendrixiness. And then maybe, let's see, some reverb. Maybe maybe a spring. You get that? So that's like 3 or 4 pedals, but that's like a simple way to start out. You start with a clean sound, and then you sort of move all the way to the end. So if you start at the end, for instance, so let's say we want to start with something more ambient. So we find something that's a bit more, oh, that's ambient. Maybe something that's rhythmic. That's actually really nice. Maybe like some wobble from Brig. So that's starting from the end. Maybe you want to start from the middle. So get rid of that, get rid of that. Start from like a pitch shifter. That's weird. Okay, so that needs something else. And maybe, no. There we go. And maybe, so that's like an example, like super simple, quick example of 3 different philosophies. And then basically all you have to do is figure out what patches you're calling on all these sort of pedals. Anything that you're changing from a mix value, if you want to save that preset somewhere else so that it doesn't affect the level, you know, for a different preset that you really liked it on, you can do that. And then basically just make a patch in the MC6 Pro and you're ready to go. So I'm going to spend a little bit extra time. I'm going to make a few presets, and then I'm just going to sort of play through them. fun. God, I've missed that. It's going to be awesome. So stick around for the last episode where it's all about errata and where we ended up and the final specs and the final everything and some thoughts about all the stuff I've learned because, boy, I've learned a lot. See you in a minute.